Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spiritual Underground podcast. As always, I am your host, Dan Reeves. And if you're just running across this podcast for the first time, I want to let you know that this is primarily 12-step recovery. That is what saved my life. Majority of my episodes are people that come on and tell their story from. I actually have them do it a little bit more long form, but much like we do in AA meetings around the world, where you get up and talk about what was like, what happened, what it's like now. That's kind of the little framework for how we're instructed to tell our stories. But and as you've probably heard on just about a lot of my podcasts here lately, I've been having trouble getting 12-step people in. I need to push that harder. I try to get them I always, when we got a guy or a gal that celebrates 1 year, I try to get them in here to tell that first year story because it is so powerful and they shift so much. And I've got some candidates that I need to see. I don't want to ever push somebody to come tell their story. That's not the energy I'm looking for. So if they don't want to, that's okay. But the majority of my podcast is that. But what I also know is that in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says it a dozen times in various different ways that we need to continue to enlarge our spiritual life. And I've got these guests knocking on my door, bringing various modalities of spiritual, and when I say spiritual, I initially connected it with religion when I first started hearing it be talked to in when I first come into AA, and they use a term saying we're spiritually sick, and I thought they were telling me I didn't go to church enough, and I didn't. But I but what I come to find out is that over some time, and this started way before I even started drinking. Born pure and perfect, and the world stepped on my spirit. I've had things happen to me that shouldn't have happened to me, and then that caused me to do things to other people that I shouldn't have done. And my spirit just literally got ill, just like this flu and COVID run that's running around today. And the 12 steps healed my spirit, and I continue to look for other ways to plug in and continue to nurture my soul, my spirit, my essence, so that it remains healthy. So my guest today is going to bring some new stuff. I have a little background in it, and I will get into that when we talk. But I don't think I've ever had anybody on the show talk about it. I don't think so. And I don't know that I say it right. Enneagram.
Correct.
So my guest Heath Havlick is here to tell us and bring some what you might want to pick. It's what's cool with the spiritual stuff. You get to cherry pick what you like, right? You get to. I don't really like that over here, and that's okay. But I really do like this and this and this. So, um, and I like the Enneagram thing, but it's been a few years. I really,
Good.
I was dating a girl that was super into it. So right off the bat, she needed to test me, and and I read about it a bit, and I added a little of that into me. I think it's a good thing to know about people. It's an interesting way to kind of see how people tick and see what makes me tick at the same time. But that's your end of the business, not mine. How's it going today?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks. It's raining here in California, which we need. So I'm very grateful. And I love the rain. I have a Celtic background. So
Uh,
yeah, I feel like my cells get excited when it rains.
yeah, we just got over a big overabundance of snow. We had, I don't know, I think there's
Mm.
13 inches over a few days, and that'll sock us pretty hard. A lot of people can't get around in the business. I didn't get mail for 2 weeks, I don't think, and my
Ah,
garbage didn't get picked up for three. And it
wow.
would look terrible up and down the street. Everybody had their garbage out, hoping it would come get picked up today. So I mean, it looked like a ratty neighborhood with all that garbage laying around in front of people's, and then of course the wind blowing and then it's scattering it, and
Ugh.
it's crazy. But we got a couple days that were like today. It's almost 60. And we had a couple warm days, and only thing that seems to be left are the big piles in the parking lots from the
Good.
yeah. So I always like to go back and see, like, I like a little bit of an origin story, if you would indulge me, to so we get to know you better.
Okay, sure. Well, as you may know already, my name's Heath, and I am a native Californian. Grew up in a broken home. Definitely had some heart wounds that needed to be dealt
Hmm.
with for sure. And I've always been a person of faith, and that helped a great deal. And yet, what I did not realize was that my own way of being, right, with my wounds and with my particular personality, I was really steamrolling people a lot. And I also was running away from the full experience of life. My personality, for those of you who may know the Enneagram, is that I have a type 7 personality. And that type likes to have fun and does not like to deal with difficult things. And anything that brings you down, right? Don't harsh my mellow. So I was not living a full life, but yet I thought that my life was amazing and exciting. I was doing all kinds of things all the time. I was out 4 or 5 nights a week. I had a great husband. Everything was exciting. And so I was not looking at all for any kind of, spiritual development or personality model or anything of that kind. But I was a screenwriter. I've been a writer since I could hold a pencil. It's just how I'm made, it's just how God made me. And so I got into screenwriting, not in Hollywood, by the way. I never actually got anything produced, so just on the side in the evenings, I would write these scripts. And I realized that I was good at plotting and I was good about at the overall idea of the script, but maybe not so good at having characters who were internally consistent, right? Who are really believable, who didn't do things that didn't make sense. So I kept seeing this ad for a book called The Literary Enneagram. And the idea behind that book was that it was supposed to help you create more internally consistent characters because you would follow this personality model. And so you could understand your own characters better. So I finally broke down and bought that book. And as I went through it, I was like, this is fascinating. This is interesting. And then I got to my type and I freaked out because it felt like someone was stealing my thoughts. Like, how is someone in my head? How do they know this about me? This is so crazy. But it's something where once you see, you can't unsee it.
Mhm.
So I knew that it was true and I knew that I had to pursue it and learn more about it. So that was a little over 20 years ago. And that sent me on a journey of learning and discovery about myself, about other people. And it led me eventually to become a Riso-Hudson Certified Enneagram Teacher.
Mm.
And now I teach and I speak and I write about the Enneagram because it's such an amazing and impactful model for understanding human behavior.
Yeah, it- I've had a couple times when that thing when I showed up at AA, they started to reading my mind, like you were saying, it was stuff that you feel that way too, and then when I met Holly and started learning about that too, it was really interesting to kind of look into some of that. Ultimately, I think at some level, our life's journey is asks us to go inside and figure out how we tick. What makes us tick and
Yep.
why we behave the way we do, and also at the
Mhm.
same time, kind of like try to separate the chaff from the wheat and get the uh, and maintain the good properties and kind of subdue the not so good ones.
Absolutely. Yep.
But it's so hard to see yourself. It's just, I say that all the time. I just don't see me very well. And like what people say about me doesn't make sense sometimes because I just I don't see me that well. So what's so good about this community is that other people can see me and they're free to tell me about it with
Y-
like my men's
yeah.
home group and a sponsor and things like that. I've signed up and I've hired some people to keep an eye on Dan.
Yes, it is so important to have a community of like-minded people. One of the founders of the modern Enneagram movement says, this work isn't hard on your own, it's impossible. You've got to have other people who speak your language, who understand what you're going through, and who are able to come alongside you and encourage you and help you, and also take you aside and say, hey, this isn't working. This isn't going so well. Here's what I see, and here's maybe what we could do to change it.
It is the history of the Enneagram. When did it come about and what was it? What do we have here?
Yeah, that's a great question because there's a lot of misconceptions around it. I see all over the internet people talking about how it's this ancient system, but it's not. It's based on a lot of ancient wisdom, and it's also based a lot on modern psychology. So it is based on ideas that have been brewing in the human brain for really millennia. But the Enneagram of personality, as we know it, really only came about in the 1950s.
Hmm.
And it was started by a man named Oscar Ichazo, who was from South America. And he was a guy who was just looking for truth. He read widely, he traveled to other places in the world, really trying to figure out what's going on. And there is an Enneagram symbol. You're probably familiar with that. It's the circle with all of the numbers around it. And then there's lines connecting the numbers in various ways. And that symbol came about through, well, no one actually knows the origin of it, but a man
Hmm.
named Gurdjieff uh, is the one who brought that symbol to the Western world. He discovered it somewhere in the Middle East and he brought it to the West. And he used it very differently than we use it today in the Enneagram of personality. But he did have some beginning ideas of what this symbol is about. So Ichazo was the man who took that symbol and he correlated it with personality types, basically. And his was a very rudimentary beginning, I would say, of understanding what was going on. Well, one of his students was a personality psychologist and named Claudio Naranjo. And he took that beginning understanding and then he applied his own personality psychology understanding to it and expanded it. He then brought it to the US and he initially started teaching it to the Jesuits, which is so interesting. It's a very scholarly group of people, right? And they're open to new ideas. And so somehow that's where this whole Enneagram idea began in the US. And from there, other people who were not Jesuits started coming to classes and started getting understanding and started writing books. And Don Richard Riso, one of the founders of the Enneagram Institute, which is where I get my certification from, was one of those original students. And he actually was a Jesuit initially, and then eventually left that field of study. But he was captivated by it and he knew that there was really something important to this. And so he really started investing his time, his life, his energy into understanding what makes us tick and why we do what we do. And it's just increased and grown from there. And what's beautiful about the Enneagram world is that people have different theories, different ideas, and different backgrounds. So we all bring something new and interesting to this field of study. And it's just an ongoing revelation, really.
Yeah, it's do you like? I just almost feels like it's a trap. But would you make a guess by knowing me this long where I land on it?
I
Uh,
wouldn't even hazard a guess at this
that
point.
that gal would do that almost incessantly with it. Like there's a two, there's a six, there's a, and it was fun. I think if I remember right, I think I'm a two.
Okay.
And I think that like leaning into three, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, that would be a
Went
three
through,
wing. Huh?
yeah, that's what the term was. I couldn't remember what the term was.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I understand that when you first learn it, especially, it's so revelatory, right? It's like you have the inside scoop and it almost feels unfair, right? Like because you kind of have gotten the secret key of why humans do what they do. And so it's really easy to go and do, that, oh, that person's a three, that person's an eight, what have you. And when I first learned the Enneagram, it was very clear to me what my type was, obviously, as I said. And it was also very obvious what type my husband was. And I made the classic mistakes, of telling him that instead of letting him have his own journey of discovery and figuring it out for himself. And then also of saying things to him like, oh, that's such a six thing to say. You're making me crazy. But the reality is that people can only be who they are, you know? I mean, every one of us are doing the best that we can with what we've got to work with, you know? And so, yes, he was doing six things, but that's because he's a six. And so, you got to give people a lot of grace. And that's actually the best thing about the Enneagram is that the more you learn about it, the more you study, the more you see it in yourself, you just get so much more compassion for other human beings. And if you need it for yourself. My personality type doesn't have a natural connection to shame. And so we are pretty easy on ourselves, really, most of the time. So we have a very different experience of life than a lot of other people do, right? Who are just saddled by shame and just
Yeah.
burdened under that horrible weight. So again, it's not really a level playing field because how you show up in the world has to do with not just your personality type, but also, as we alluded to earlier, the things that hurt you throughout your life, the ways that you were wounded. And then you walk through the world as a walking wounded person, but not realizing it. You know, you were talking about how it's hard to see yourself and hard to know yourself. And it is because your whole personality structure is just a series of ways to help you survive. And so it makes complete sense to you based on your own personal experiences. And yet that's not who you actually and authentically are in the core of your being. And so really a major goal of our lives is to discover who we actually are underneath all of those wounds.
Yeah. Yep. We talk about, I was addicts and alcoholics are chameleons. I was who I
Mm,
thought you needed to be me to be according to what setting I was in.
yeah.
But I didn't even see that until starting to do the work on myself and taking off on this journey. And that all started with the 12 steps. I really felt like in 2015 when I walked in the doors, like, look, another thing I say is everything I see happens in the rearview mirror, right? I don't see it in my headlights. I look over my shoulder and go, oh, I see what had just happened there. Uh, but I
Yeah.
really honestly did feel like I was an adolescent boy all my life up until whenever I walked in and getting sober, through that process. And then, it wasn't just about getting sober, it was about finding out who I really am. Ultimately, more so, I like to say, getting rid of everything I'm not. It's
That
more of that and felt like a 12, 13-year-old boy and I had no idea. I will picture, and it helps me with some compassion with people now, but it's there's some movie where the little kid is in dad, or probably a number of movies where the little 10, 12-year-old kid is in dad's suit, and the arms are too long and the pants are too
yeah.
long and the
Yeah.
collar's too big around, and that's the way I pictured myself. Have that vision that I uh, had so much stuff piled up on me and doing so much pretending, like a
Hmm.
shadow. I was like everybody else's shadow. I'd look to see what you were doing and hope that was the right thing to do and imitate that.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, there's an idea that I think is really well founded, which is that we stop growing emotionally at the age of our greatest hurt. So there are some people who are, adult sized 3 and 4 year olds, and they can go to work and they can pay their bills maybe, but they are not operating at an adult emotional level because that's where they got stuck and that's where they got wounded. So I love it that you mentioned that story. And another thing you said reminded me of something that a pretty famous Enneagram teacher, Suzanne Stabile, says. People ask her what she does for a living, and she says, I help people know who they're not. Right. So both of us are coming at this unveiling, right, or peeling away from a little bit of a different perspective, but they absolutely intertwine and connect.
yeah, yeah. Uh, and it is. I thought you was going to go someplace else with the what they do thing because that's another one of the things like I'm a human being, not a human doing. That thing of all that stuff makes sense to me. And those little one liners, I don't think there's anybody's got more one liners than 12-step programs. I mean, they're just
Mm.
everywhere, and borrowed and stolen. Um, but we got the people like you and the teacher you just talked about that are out running around the world trying to help people to undo that.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people I say, people who are forces for the good in the world. And my guests will be a little tired of hearing this too, but if you're looking in normal places where people look today, you'd think the world's a total mess. And there's some, you could make an argument for that, but I keep on meeting people, and in my community, we're out with our hands out trying to help people. I've got groups of guys that are working with the homeless community. Doesn't have anything to do. That's just a passion they found when they got sober. And
Yeah.
and then I get to meet these shamans on here. And that sounds woo to me at first, but you get to know them, and they're just energy healers. They're just
Mm.
helping people. They're helping people get rid of what they're not.
Yeah.
And that shining that light around the world, I think is, I don't know, it would be my stance doing this, and a little biased or whatever, but I feel a wave of good out there working and churning.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I had periods of my life, even though my personality type is considered a positive outlook type, I also have aspects of myself. Again, I think part of it comes from brokenness and part of it comes from just an innate sensitivity that God made me with that would not always say that, there's a lot of good in the world. Because sometimes the pain and the difficulty, whether it's yours or when you look out into the world, can seem so overwhelming that you just feel like, oh, I just want out. I don't even want to deal with this. This is too painful. I don't want this to be my entire, existence on the earth. And yet, as I've been, preparing to launch my second book, and as I've been reaching out to podcasters, I've had the exact same experience that you have, Dan, of just seeing all these lovely souls in the world who are doing what they can to help human beings recover and be well and be who they were meant to be. And it just fills me with so much joy.
We kind of, and we got it right out of the dictionary. But for that IM 1-2 program of trying to deliver the 12 steps to everybody that wants to try the tools, uh, um, we define there's a definition in the dictionary for recovery. A few of them, but one is to reclaim that which was lost or stolen.
Hmm.
And that's what happened to me. I lost some of me, and some of me was stolen straight up.
Yep. Yep.
And I didn't even know it. Right, that's what you're saying. Just like you said, I'm walking along down the street, having babies and getting married, or the other way around, getting married, having babies. I did do that in the right order, buying a home, holding a job, and doing all that. But I feel, looking back, man, it was so much just going through the motions, just like
Hmm.
blindly. It's like having a blindfold on, just doing what I knew I was supposed to do next, without any kind of
Hmm.
real joy. You'd have periods of it, you'd have some moments, but uh, today I'm having a blast living. I have another
Yeah.
saying that I put: if you're not having a blast in your recovery, you're not doing it right. Because my group's having fun, and that's
Good.
when I got here. There's a few I was always talked about. My sponsor is an author, also. I see
Mm.
how hard it is to write, so I say this tongue in cheek because I don't think I will ever do this. But write a book of the myths of recovery, and it probably goes for the
Mhm.
same. And I mean, it's not just I'm not talking about just addiction. I'm talking about this recovery for everybody thing of
Yeah.
uh, just the myths, like I'll never have any more fun. I'm never not gonna have any friends. I'll never be able to go to a ball game or a concert and I expected when I walked in the rooms to see this glum lot. And there's actually a line in the big book that says, "We are not a glum lot. We absolutely
Uh,
insist upon enjoying life." And if you haven't never read the Alcoholics book, it really is a good book. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. And it's about living. you
mhm.
know, just a little bit of it's like about not drinking. And that's another thing. I thought I was going to come in here and stop drinking. But what I found out, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start living. Uh, you know,
That's so
'cause
beautiful. What a
it's-
huge change of perspective that is.
yeah. And I find it to be true. If you know, I tell people, and a man said this to me. He come one of my very first meetings, and it's so hard to walk into your first meetings. The very first meeting I went to, pulled up in the church parking lot, and I put my car in reverse and drove back. No, Dan, you got to stay. No, I'm getting out of here. No, you got to stay. And so hard to walk in there and then
Mhm.
see all those people smiling and hugging each other. And, I felt like I arrived at some party. And I even tell people now, I said, this is a system set up where you have a community just waiting for you, and they're going to be happy when you walk through the door. You're going to think you're a superstar when you walk through the door, and they haven't never seen you before because everybody's going to be wanting to talk to you, and everybody's going to be wanting to
Yeah.
help you. And but he
Mm.
told me, he said, if you have this thing called alcoholism, this thing that I got, if you'll work these steps and practice these principles in your life's going to get a whole lot better. He said, but
Mm.
if you have this thing called alcoholism, this thing that I got, and you don't work these steps and you don't practice these principles in your life's going to get a whole lot effing worse. And he didn't abbreviate it. And I tried to do the 12 steps my way for almost 4 years, from 2011 to 2015, picking and choosing and not surrendering. And things just
Mm.
kept on getting worse until I was standing in front of a judge down in New Albany, Indiana. And he said, sentencing guidelines for the crimes I had committed was 6 to 20 years in the Indiana Department of Corrections. And that, I couldn't even stop with that on my shoulders. I went
Wow.
6 more months going through court and doing all this stuff, and I was still sneaking around. I was pretending to be sober, wouldn't let anybody catch me, or at least I was trying not to. But these things, everything in life that's any good just takes some work.
Yep.
And learning the Enneagram and doing that takes some work. You have to kind of study that if you really want to do that. It's the same way with my 12-step lifestyle. Uh, and
Yeah.
it's tough to like get all your feet into the multiple pools, You kind of have to like, I can pick one, and then I can kind of play and put my toe in the water in
Right.
other ones.
Yeah.
And I've really yet to find anything that's ahead. I went crazy on yoga back in early recovery because of what it was doing for my body, and
Mhm.
my spirit both. I was just feeling good. I was felt as good as I'd ever felt.
Mhm.
Then COVID hit and they shut down all the yoga studios, and it's terribly difficult to maintain a practice like you can't. It's difficult for me to maintain a practice with as much intensity at home by myself as out there. And that's one thing of where I was
Yeah.
going with that is the Enneagram kind of overwhelmed me.
Mhm.
It, uh,
Yeah.
it started feeling like too much.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. And I love your point about how, pick one thing and that's your main thing, and then you can draw from other things. As I said, the Enneagram absolutely dovetails with recovery, but, you know, pick the one thing and then add in what is useful and helpful to you. My husband always tells people that the Enneagram is complex and it's complicated. And when he first would say that, I'd be like, no, honey, don't say that. Because I didn't want people to be discouraged, right? I didn't want them
Right,
to think,
right,
oh, this is too hard and involved. I don't want to do it. But here's the thing, any kind of recovery from addiction, from your personality wounds, whatever, takes work. And not everyone is willing to do the work. So recovery is an act of bravery. And I have nothing but respect for people who are in it, people who are trying to do it, people who have succeeded and do it, people who, kind of fall back and then come back. It's awesome that human beings can have enough self-awareness to realize, oh, what I have been doing is not working. And in fact, is making things worse. And I'm never going to have the fun life, the joy, the community available to me unless I'm willing to put in the work. So the Enneagram is a bit of work. There's no two bones about it. And, what's so interesting is that as it's become more popular and has really become widespread in at least American culture, is that you start to see who's serious and who's not, right? So you can take just the very surface level view of learning just the basic personality types, and then you sort of plant your flag there and you say, this is what I am, and this is what you are, and you don't go any further than that. And you make some funny memes on Instagram and, whatever, and then you move on. Okay, we're not going to force anyone to grow spiritually. It's okay. But for the people who really get it and who really understand what we're trying to do and what the Enneagram is for, those are the people who are going to do the work and who are going to learn all of the complex interweavings, et cetera, and how this all works. Those are the people who are going to benefit from it and really see transformation in their lives, in their relationships, in every part of their life.
Uh, another one of the things I never thought I'd be doing. I hold a annual men's retreat at a place out in the country that I have. I try to find material too, because we don't just go play. We actually do some work while we're there too.
Yeah.
I'm always trying, and God, higher power, whatever you want to call it, the universe tends to uh, throw information out on my path. And I used to work real hard to find it ahead of time, but like now I know it's going to fall. It's going to fall out of the sky for me. And I did. I when the Enneagram fell out of the sky back then, and I'd learned a little bit about it. I just, again, I wouldn't be. I will nowhere any like in any position to be teaching it or anything like that. But but I can expose these people to stuff, and certain ones
Yeah.
will it'll tickle them. There's some funny thing about us about how we get. Each individual will be tickled by a particular thing. That will spark our interest, and we're just like, yeah, hey, I like that. I want to know more about it. And a few of those men did. And the
That's
other thing
great.
is, I don't see that. You know, I don't see too many men when I see posts about Enneagram. It almost seems like it's almost always females.
I wonder if that is par for the course for a lot of spiritual formation, personal transformation, personal development sorts of things, you know?
Yeah, probably so.
Uh, yeah, most of the people in my Enneagram group that I hold once a month are women, but there are several men who are devoted and who really try to show up as well and are committed to the transformation process. So I think it's just again the way men and women are built differently, we're wired
Yeah.
differently,
Just
and
like the
women
Enneagram numbers. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. I do man stuff because I'm a man. I can't help it. I do two stuff because I'm a two. I can't help it.
exactly. And again, it's not that, being a two is not good or being a man is not good or being a woman is not good. It's all just a matter of perspective. And we all have beautiful gifts to bring each other. So I'm not at all in favor of the feminization of women. I'm not in favor of the or of men or the masculinization of women. They both have such beautiful things to offer each other and the world. And it's the same with every Enneagram type. I think the reason that God made 9 different personality types is so that we would be forced to have community. We would be forced to come together and say, oh, this is my perspective. Oh, this is my perspective. And we would all have the full picture. What I liken our personalities to is like one of those old oh, I can't think of the word. The little kind of fake camera of when we were kids, and you put the little reel in, and then you clicked, and it was like a slideshow, and you
Yeah, like
saw
you
all.
watch Snoopy on it and stuff, and watch
Yes, and you
kind of a still frame cartoons and things. I can't
exactly.
remember
Yeah,
what it was called either.
I know it's totally left my brain. But what happens with personality is that you get stuck on one of those pictures, and you think it's the entire picture,
Mm.
or you think it's the entire story, but you're just seeing one little tiny bit of it. So, what's beautiful about the Enneagram is that as you, again, begin to have self awareness, as you begin to see, oh, yes, these things about my personality are true and they are, injurious to other people. They do prevent me from being who I authentically was made to be. Then you can join up with other people and you can appreciate their perspective more. And you can realize I don't have all the answers. I do need other human beings to come alongside me and help me get a perspective that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
We all, you're, you fit into one particular type. But like this test told me I had a third wing or whatever, or wing of three or whatever it said. Was that what you said? This wing? Uh,
Yeah, wing.
but really, but we all have all of the personality types at some level or another too.
Exactly.
It's just
Exactly.
that you have a overriding particular one. And then, I mean, to think about how much work goes into, like, you when you said, when God, if he, he, she, it, like, you know, that stuff gets where I'm like, whoa, to actually on purpose make these nine different types, but just equally as well, the people who figured it out and laid it out and early on back, those people that take a tremendous amount of energy. They would be, you'd have to devote your life to doing
Absolutely.
something like that. You're not going to also play hockey or I see
That's
it. And I
exactly
was a
right.
little bit, one other thing I saw was, and I did it too, a rejection of when my type was told to me, you
Mm,
know, the initial wanting to disagree with it. That's like, and I have a whole lot different, all the stuff we evolve, right? We continue to evolve in our growing in our understanding. And,
yep.
um, so like today, the helper is, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's
back
the thing
then,
that's so beautiful.
go ahead.
I was going to say that's the thing that's so beautiful is that the personality, on one hand, it represents what's broken in us, but on the other hand, it represents um, beautiful, beautiful things. And so, as you said, we have all nine types in us. One of them is our home base. One of them is what we call like our operating system. And
Mm,
even though, I can be in the room with 12 other sevens, we all have that same basic operating system. That doesn't mean we're cookie cutters. We've all had radically different life experiences and perspectives again. And so we all have beautiful gifts that we can bring to the table of humanity. And we have all of the gifts inside of us, all nine of those from those personalities. But again, one will manifest more strongly than the other ones will. So, really, part of our discovery journey is being able to access all of those gifts. And that is something
well
really
rounded.
beautiful to strive for, to work towards.
Yeah, that's sometimes, um, some other characters in our past have been, to be fully enlightened. It's just moving as close as we're humanly possible to be able to uh, get in that well-rounded uh, personality developed, where you're not, because you really, if you were pigeonholed in one of them, that's not going to make you helpful to other people. You're too
Right.
much. You can't be. You're pigeonholed. You know, I worked in corporate America for 28 years, and I worked for them for 24 years as an alcoholic, drug addict, and then I
Well,
sober for 4 years, and they laid me off. Uh, but part of that was starting to find myself because
uh-huh.
I wasn't just signing up for the dance every time they asked, and
Yeah.
and then started going, no, I don't want more work. I got plenty of work here. Don't put me on this special team. It's going to keep me here till 7 or 8 o'clock at night, not pay me anymore. And
Yeah.
and I was on home incarceration for a year. In my first year, well, actually, they cut it out. I was sentenced to a year, but they cut it off at 9 months. But and I never had to tell my employer. But that 9 months taught me to say no. Not
Because
just
you had to
no,
get home.
because I had to be home at a certain time. I had a schedule to keep, and then I had other things, and they ran my schedule. Now, for a guy who was on home incarceration, I wasn't home very much because they let me take my kids to point A and point B, like scouts and dance and stuff, and they were little then. And they obviously let me go to work, and they said, as long as I was turning in a pay stub every week to them, they figured I was working because if I wasn't working, they wouldn't be paying me. So
Yeah.
I thought, because I was scared they were going to talk to my employer, and I caught a felony. I didn't want to. Uh,
Yeah.
that's not good news at work. But I learned how to navigate not saying no. So then once I learned I could do that, and I wasn't on home incarceration anymore, I kept on, protecting my boundaries around work. And I think I turned into a guy that, like, a virus at work, because this if he's getting away with saying no, then other people start getting away. They start saying it, and their
Mhm.
hope that I wasn't a good person to have around after a while. But I got a really good severance package and everything. But like when I look at this helper thing today, I have this skill set. My dad taught me how to do just about everything. I'm as handy as can be, man. There's almost nothing I can't
Great.
fix. And
My
people
husband's
started
the same
calling
way.
me, asking me to fix stuff for them. And it started with a realtor that knew there's a little girl that lived up the street from me. I'm in my she called me up and wanted to ask me if I could fix a house so that to help her get it sold. And it's something simple. And I said, yeah. And then she called me again and again. And then her friends started calling me. And then next thing you know, by like everything's happened to me in recovery, this good stuff. I didn't really do any of it. It happened for me. I didn't. So now I
Uh-huh.
walk around and spend most of my days a handyman and I'm out helping people. And, uh, and I thought I
So
was going
great.
to be running into people who were mad because their stuff's broken. But I've been sent to the best clients ever, man. And the best thing about it is they're all happy when I leave. And I say that joke once in a while. It's not because I'm leaving. Uh, they're happy because their stuff is fixed. I get
Yep.
15 item honeydew list stuff in somebody's house, and the stuff's been bugging them forever.
Yep.
And I can go over to their house and knock it all out in a day. And it makes people really, really happy to have that happen. So, you know, and
Yep.
and then I found this niche of, we say we had to give it away to keep it in 12-step recovery. So we sponsor other people. And I've had the opportunity in that recovery for all group to, it was only men that had this particular set of tools the way we work it. So we did some cross gender sponsoring, which is as long as you're keeping your wheels underneath of you and it's not a problem, but it can be a problem.
Yeah.
Um, and I found out how much I like doing it. And it's really nothing.
Mm,
If I could sponsor men all day, every day, and the bills would still be paid and lights are be on, the insurance gets paid and all that kind of stuff, that's what I would do. If there's nothing that
mm,
brings more to my soul than watching some guy come in just beat up, verges of divorces, lost jobs, and then watch them start doing this, and then they get a better job, and their family gets put back together most of the time, not all the time. Um, but like I lost my marriage and I gave it away, and my addiction, and my kids were scared to stay with me for a while, and
mm.
and they were right to be.
Yeah.
I wasn't safe to be around,
Mhm.
and my ex-wife probably would, what they would say, she wouldn't have peed on me if I was on fire. And but now we're great, and this stuff patched
Oh,
all that
good.
up, and we're like best, really good friends. I can call her, she can call me. I go fix her stuff. She's a big, highly educated nurse, so I got that. Or dad's not feeling good and he won't go to the doctor. I can say, get Angie over here,
Yeah.
and my
Yeah.
kids. I just this past Tuesday is I celebrated 10 years, and my daughter went with me. My dad was not feeling well. My son had to work, and my daughter, for the first time, got up and said something. We invite the family members to share. We're a
Wow.
men's meeting, but we allow family to come support us we celebrate the last Tuesday of the month. And
Yeah.
we really impress upon people to get up and share. Moms get up and share, dads, and my daughter got up and shared, and I'm on to cry just remembering it, because
Yeah.
of where I was and this transformation, this work I've done to get to where I'm at. And I know I'm not done
Yeah.
either. That's the other cool thing. It's like being a kid
You're
that
never done.
you know, and I really like that aspect of it. That I don't look at it as like I'm never going to be done with this. I look at it more like coming down the steps at Christmas time on Christmas morning to see what the next gift is around the corner.
Ah, that's so
And
beautiful.
the bad stuff still happens. I mean, life is
Yep.
life, and there's
Yep.
things. I lost my mother when I was 14 months sober. I mean, it was
Ooh.
horrible. She had
Mm,
had a stroke, and it was a long, well, it felt it was really just about a 6 month thing, but it felt like 6 years, And for
mhm.
part of that, I was wrapped up with the law too, so I had an ankle bracelet on. And Dad had called me at 3 o'clock in the morning because Mom fell and he needed help, and technically I can't help. But I would call
Yeah.
down there and I would leave a message on the voicemail, and the message would say, "Do not call this number and leave a message saying you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing." And it was worded a little different than that, uh, but I would go over and I'd come back and I'd call them again, and never once did they give me any heat over that. I had a social worker down there that was, you got your correction side and you got your social worker side, and she was an angel. She came into my
Mm,
life. We're friends. We're still friends. When talk once in a
lovely.
while, and she's been to some of my sobriety birthdays, but uh, just,
Yeah.
and what I'm saying here is that, whatever modality of work, 'cause there's nobody comes through here unscathed. I don't believe, not in the stories I've heard. Nobody. I
Mm,
mean, there may be a rare pickle here and there, but I don't know any of them. And like I
yeah.
said, you don't even know what some of these wounds are. I always,
Yeah.
I got to thinking about like if you were just like 6 months old and you were in your crib and maybe mom got talking with a neighbor outside or something, and you're in here crying and freaking out, and you're not even able, and it had an impact on you because I think it can. I
Yep.
think that can have
Yep.
an impact on you. Even
Hmm.
prenatal stuff can, but
Yep.
and then you grow up and you got something that ain't right, and you can't remember that. You can't
Right.
access it. But I've had guests on here that through some work they've accessed stuff that they shouldn't be able to remember.
Yep.
Uh,
I've heard of that as well, and it's very useful. Yep.
so we all end up with these. Well, they're pretty much cat's out of the bag at some level that trauma of some sort or another, some wound, some core wound or
Hmm.
wounds is pretty much underneath of everybody that ends up uh, substance abuser.
Yep.
And that wouldn't be talked about. 1935 is when that book was written. They weren't talking inner child stuff back then. Uh,
Right.
but we bring that in today, and even some more conservative groups around town will kind of mock you if you talk about it.
Mm.
My sponsor calls them crusty old timers, and my sponsor's been sober 40 years. He just celebrated
Ooh,
40, and he works in the field
that's
too. So
amazing. Yeah.
I got a it's like an unfair advantage to have that man as my sponsor. Uh, it's and I try, but it's the great thing is as I model my sponsor and after what he's taught me, so I get to be that guy for a whole bunch of people too. And
Yes, and
in
that's
years,
what's so
I've
beautiful.
walked some 30 something people through this work, usually about two or three a year. And and there's a bond that happens when you do that work together too. And I would have guessed that
Sure.
you all probably in your circles have a similar kind of thing when you're so you meet
Yeah.
you have a meeting at your house or you have a meeting someplace once a month. Did I hear you say that?
Yeah, it used to
A
be at my
workshop?
house, and then COVID hit, and then of course that ruined it. So we were meeting online, and then once you get used to meeting online, then people are like, "Ooh, let's not have to drive anywhere. We'll just meet online." So we still do, and it's once a month, and we get together and we do a stillness practice of about 5 minutes. It's not very long, but that's a key to becoming self-aware. And then we share both, joys and difficulties related to our personality, what's going on with us. And then we go through a book together and we talk about the various types and people we know who've had that type and interactions we've had with people of that type, etc., all geared toward greater understanding of ourselves and others. And it is so beautiful. We have just such moments of grace where we are all just caring for each other and we're listening to somebody's hard day or a struggle that they're having and we're so there for each other. It's just such a beautiful thing to have in your life. So we really cherish those times together.
Feel that way about my men's home group. We are so connected, and God brought some things to me. I always joke around about like I visualize it like sticky notes that are it's an Easter egg hunt almost, and I got these little sticky notes that are left around. Like start a podcast. Oh, I can't do that. Yeah, you can start one. Start a men's retreat. Oh, well, you're not qualified. I was first time I did my first hell ran my first men's retreat. I was 18 months sober. Had no business really doing that and but I had good support around me, like my sponsor and all
There we
that
go.
too, and
Yeah.
so it helped me do that. But
Yeah.
it had some stuff to bring our group closer. And when people come in, you're either one. Usually, you see one. It's an extreme. You come in there and you see the love that we are putting on one another and the connectedness, and you're either squirting out the door as fast as you can, because it's not like men to be this energy that we have, this loving
Mhm.
energy with one another. I don't see that to me, but I don't see that any place really. We definitely have something very special going on, and or you see these guys that come in, and I like to say like, when you're a little kid, you go knock on the door and ask for somebody to come out and play, and Johnny come out and play. It's that kind of feeling for with a new person. They're like, all right, there's already a ball game at the park. I don't have to start one. I don't have to go knock on doors, and they will just come in, and you feel that there's something missing in there, and this is filling that hole, something they've been looking for all their lives, probably. And you try to find it through
Mhm.
the dope and booze at some level. In a way, the partying was fun and brought you together at
Yeah,
one point,
yeah,
but then
yeah.
that ends at some point, and then you're down in the basement chugging vodka and not going
On
anywhere
your
and
own.
taking baths and on your own. But you don't
Exactly.
have that community like you're talking. That just sounds exactly, and that's what happens when I talk to people. I don't want to say that because it sounds funny, but I'll say it. When I get to meet people like you, I'll hear that you're doing almost something that very much mirrors what we're doing.
Mhm.
But you got a book that you're looking at. We got a book that we're looking at, uh, and we quote out of it all the time. I would imagine you all do the same thing,
Yep.
and then that element that's probably unintentional in a sense, but supremely valuable is this thing where you get this true loving support from these other people when you're having a bad day, or
Yep.
these people who are super happy for you and are high-fiving you when you're having a good day. And we just support one another. We have a
Mhm.
Discord, with Discord.
Yep.
We have a Discord group. So we're in touch with each other every day, all day. We're in there checking it, and people share their battle. Somebody needs some prayers because uh, other night, some guy's wife got really sick and passed out and scared him to death. And he was
Oh,
able to
yeah.
reach out real quick. And then what I notice, and this is some people won't believe this, but I see these prayers work over and over and over again, where in just a few hours, that lady's
Hmm.
okay and there's nothing wrong with her and they don't know what, like she's at the ER and they're going, no, we can't find anything. And
Oh, I
oh
absolutely
well,
believe that.
there just wasn't nothing there. I was like, no, I think the power of prayer had an impact, and I've seen this. Another one of the
Yep.
lines I like to say is, and this happened in my own life, is the evidence of good for me doing this work and walking this path.
Mhm.
Uh, the evidence started piling up, and I can't deny it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking, it's just a fluke. That's a coincidence. That was, and but the same thing in this prayer stuff is that I've seen it work too many times to call it a coincidence.
Exactly. How many times has something happened before it's not a coincidence anymore? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you talked about your stillness. Well, our 11th step says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with the God as we understand Him. And
Absolutely.
my morning starts out, and usually my mornings and my evenings, and maybe once in the daytime, um, I get some stillness. And that middle of the day one, a lot of people might call that a nap, but I qualify it as some stillness. I just get still for a minute and can
Hmm.
take a little quick little nap. And meditation's helping me be able to sleep. It's probably one of the things I can almost flip a switch in me and turn Dan off. So when I take a nap, I can take an effective nap where I'm not messing around getting to sleep. I use my
Mm.
meditation practice to shut me down. And sometimes I don't go all the way down. I know I didn't fall asleep. I can tell I didn't, but it recharges me just like it did. And a
Mm.
10, 15, 20-minute nap like that is a lifesaver for me in the middle of some days. And but yeah, wake up with prayer and meditation, go to sleep with it. And it's a piece that a lot of people in the 12 steps don't want to practice meditation.
Mm.
I always
Yeah,
it's not
there's a
a la
lot of
carte.
resistance around.
Yeah, yeah. I can't. You don't understand. My brain races. Well, that's why I do meditate.
I was just going to
Uh,
say that's exactly the reason you do it because you can train your brain to stop racing.
yep.
And then you can actually go, oh, that emotion I'm feeling, that's not actually me. I'm able to observe it. And so I don't have to act on it. Or, oh, I feel this addictive impulse, but I am not that impulse because I can look at it in
Yeah.
stillness. And then I know that I have a choice and I don't have to choose that thing. It's
Well,
vitally important.
yes, it is. I think it's and at some level I can see people, and if they're not doing well, you can just tell they're not doing well. In a couple of minutes of talking, that'd be one thing they're not doing anymore. Or they're not doing it all.
Hmm.
I try
Yep.
to stay on my guys, and I say, "Come on, man! I'm asking you to do nothing for a few minutes. You're telling me you can't do that."
Though it's one of the hardest things to do, especially in our American culture where everything is just go, go, go all the time. And we live in this culture that is saturated with streaming audio, streaming video, everything is immediately, instantly available to you. If you don't want to, you don't have to have 1 minute of silence in your entire day. Right. And so we just get wired to do that. And I have to be careful with that myself because I'm always wanting to learn new things. And so I've always got a podcast or a YouTube video or some or a class on, trying to learn something and hear something. And I have to catch myself and be, wait a minute, when were you silent last? Did you last not hear something? You don't always have to have stimulation. You need to learn how to be quiet. And when I first started just being quiet and still, I would put the timer on for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and it felt like torment. My heart would race. And I thought to myself, wait, this is supposed to be relaxing. I feel like I'm going to die. What in the world is happening here? And so for me, that was actually an aspect of my personality of type 7 on the Enneagram. So not everyone has that experience, but a lot of people do. It's so uncomfortable and it
Yes.
feels like it's a waste of time because you're not producing anything, right? But
Hmm.
you are. You just don't realize it. You're what you're producing is greater awareness of who you actually are in this world. But it happens slowly over time. It's an organic process. It's not like this mechanistic if then situation where you go to work and you get your paycheck and it's on a certain day and it's arriving. The transformation process of inner healing and spiritual formation is organic and you do not have control over it. Your responsibility is to show up and do the work consistently, and then the transformation just unfolds in miraculous ways. I have this one specific instance where I was out somewhere running errands and I realized, oh my word, I forgot my water bottle and I have no snacks in my purse. And for me, that is a huge deal because I'm hungry constantly and I have a little bit of a blood sugar issue. And so it's really important, to have those things. And so I would be preoccupied with that without even realizing it, right? It just became such a part of my life. Oh, I must always have snacks. I must always take my water bottle everywhere. And the day that I left it at home, it was inconvenient because I did get hungry while I was out. But it was so liberating and exciting because I realized that my personality structure was starting to relax, that I didn't have to be afraid so much, that I didn't have to be so fixated on making sure that my physical needs were met at all times. And that happened absolutely organically. And it was amazing and just very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's in my world, guys want to figure out like, why are we doing this? And they don't. And I remember too when the first time, my sponsor was giving me these instructions. I'm like, how can this possibly help? I never would tell him that, but as he's giving me these instructions back in there's going, this sounds like some baloney to me, man. Uh, but uh, just did it, and it transformed me, and I watch it. I don't know why. I know a little bit about why the 12 step works because some of it is inventory and similar to Enneagram stuff about going in and addressing
Yep.
your core wounds and the going out and
Yep.
cleaning house and making amends so that you don't have that cloud over your shoulder from what you did back so and so. Or so I get it a little bit, but yeah, it just you said it exactly. You just show up and do the work, and we always like say, I'll do the danning and I'll let God do the godding. Uh, I'll just keep on danning,
Beautiful.
and that's liberating too. To know,
Mhm.
like to know in my heart that whatever I'm gonna go through, it's gonna work out. I get through these slow periods at work where I don't, it's Sunday night and I don't have a job next week,
Mm.
none. But it'll fill up. It just does. And now, like, I used to freak out about it a little bit, but now I just go, well, it'll come back around. And
Yep.
no matter what happens to me in life, and then this is the thing about community of watching these men walk through various things, uh, and seeing that they made it through that. And, and then I've had my own, like losing my mom, my daughter a couple of years ago. She was 17 years old and come to me and told me she was addicted to fentanyl. And yeah, that's a rough one right there. And she's doing good today, but it was rough for a while because you don't know when that's silver bullet stuff or whatever. That's Russian roulette. It's you don't
Yeah.
know you're getting these pain pills that are fake, and you
Yeah.
don't know any one of them
Yeah.
could be the last one you ever take. And
Mhm.
so, then I get to do my part and walk through hard stuff. And guys come and tell me about, man, I don't know how you do it. But we do it all together and we're watching and seeing it. And just there's a
Mhm.
life is like a tightrope, at some level. And I have a safety net under me. And I know it's made up
Mm.
of my support group, my own connection with my higher power, my sponsor. And I can go ahead and keep on walking the rope knowing that if I slip off there, I'm going to get caught. I just
Yep.
felt uh, my brothers catch me some years ago when something had happened to my daughter that was part of why she probably started taking fentanyl. And that happened back then. And actually, fentanyl wasn't even bad compared to that. But
Mm.
I felt those guys. I wouldn't have survived, but they could almost like feel their hands on me when I lay down at night. That I knew I had that kind of support.
Yeah.
Once you develop that, the thought of losing that, like the thought of getting drunk now,
Yeah.
you know, walking away from these men. I had a sponsee not long ago, and he was still smoking weed. Thought that was trying to tell himself that was okay. And we do try to do 100% abstinence is
Yeah.
our code. Uh, I finally ended up. I got a new sponsee, and his main thing was pot. And now I'm sitting here turning my back to this guy, or turning my blind eye to his using, while I'm trying to talk to this guy about how to stop using. And I just had to go to my friend and say, look, here's the deal. And if you're going to continue to do that, I can't continue to sponsor you. It's
Mm.
there's some incontinuity in my heart. There's some integrity issues going on with me because I got this guy and I got that guy. So there's in
Mhm.
me myself, and then it was blaring. And he went away and thought about it for a little while, a couple few weeks. And he come back, and the motivating feature was is he said if that he was going to lose this group of men around him. It wasn't so much that he
Mm.
wanted to stop smoking, but he didn't want to lose these friends. And it wouldn't been like we'd befriend him. Uh, but to be in the club, though, you got to be doing the deal. You know,
Yeah.
when you're new and you're stumbling along, we'll love you. We say we'll love you until you can love yourself. And
Mm.
but like after a while, you got to be doing it. You got to be on board to be part of the club. You have to
Yep.
be continuing to do the handshake uh, and doing that. So I
Yeah.
really like how you know, I had a guest a couple of weeks ago was talking about the power of touch. That's a need, a human need that we need to be touched. And
Mm.
there was some
Mm.
study at one point about some babies that they separated them
Yes.
and like they was they had to stop that because the babies are dying. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, that's why we voted. We have a thing called the group conscience, and the group votes on things, and the majority rules. You just got to go with it. If you don't like it, you can go someplace else or whatever. But and we voted on where to stay Zoom because a lot of people wanted to stay at Zoom, but there was also a big contingent of it that I missed it. We hug in our meeting, not handshakes. We hug, and it wasn't
Mhm.
until Scott on the show last week or 2 weeks ago brought that to me is this is like, wow, that's how I'm getting most of my touch needs met today is by meeting with these dudes and hugging them. Uh,
Mm.
and I need that. We went over to the snow and stuff. The church closed for the holidays. I don't. That seems kind of weird, but they close between Christmas. They close at night. They don't want to. The janitor doesn't want to be there on Christmas Eve.
Okay.
And that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so we tried to do something else, but we got shut down. We did Zoom, but I missed it, and I could feel me missing it. I wanted to
Hmm.
get back together because I want to hug these guys and I want to receive their hugs.
Yeah.
I have have you ever there's AA speakers, there are circuit speakers. There's thousands of speaker tapes out on the internet that you can listen to these
Okay.
things, almost like my podcast. I had no
Yeah.
idea. And that's part of the reason why I started a podcast. That was so meaningful to me was music and football and basketball and the news and all that stuff was doing nothing to help me stay sober. I had attached all my drinking and using to this stuff like music and ball games. And, I don't know how to sit down and watch a basketball game without having beer. And so somebody turned me on to them tapes, and I just poured that in my head all day long. And it helped me stay sober, and it brainwashed me at some level, and my brain needed washing. I'm not talking about that in a bad way. It poured recovery. It immersed me in recovery
Yeah.
thoughts for most
Yeah.
of my waking day, and that's part of that is a big reason why I was doing this. But there's a particular speaker that I just love to death, man, and I heard him a couple of years ago. I bumped into him on a Zoom meeting because that's and
Yeah.
I found out how to get a hold of him, and I invited him to be on my podcast, and he came, and I got to have my idol, sort of my hero, more like. And he come by,
Yeah.
he just wrote that's a book sitting here beside me. It's called Anger and Grief Relief, and he come back on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like tingling up and down my back, like goosebumps the whole time. Just sitting here thinking, and I try to impress upon him how much he means to me, man, because I use
Yeah.
his little sayings and his little stuff. I tell my guys, don't listen to Scott L until we're through the steps, because it'll let the cat out of the bag, because I'm using so much of his stuff. Uh, and when we do that, I turn them loose. So, what? Let's talk about your book.
Okay.
Tell me a little
Yeah.
about. You might want to start about the first book. I don't know, is
Well,
they read
I
into one
can,
another or not,
yeah, they do. So the
because
first
that's
one
really
is,
why you're here.
yeah, but meeting you and speaking with you about these topics has been a delight. So the first book is called Becoming Your True You. And the subtitle is God, the Enneagram, and Your Unique Purpose. I'm very much a person who believes in purpose. I believe we're here for a reason. And I also believe that we are running on autopilot most of the time uh, because of our personality, because of our wounds, and that as we can learn the Enneagram, it not only helps us to see who we actually are, but then it helps us to see, oh, this is who I actually am, and this is what I was made for. It very much reminds me of your story about how when you got sober at work, you stopped saying yes to everything because that was no longer part of your personality. It's not who you wanted to be anymore, right? And so that very much changed things.
Mhm.
So that's what the first book is all about. So then the second book that's coming out in March is called Know Yourself to Know God. And when I first learned the Enneagram, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I because I thought I was on the happy train and my life was awesome and everyone should just be like me, right? Not really realizing I was like steamrolling through over people's pain and causing all kinds of distress in my relationships. So I realized immediately, oh my word, I'm not who I thought I was. And I am something different than I even understand right now. So if that's the case, then I cannot be who God made me until I understand who I am. So that's the whole, the premise of the first book. And then the second one, this one is called Know Yourself to Know God. And it goes over it's a small introduction. It's about 27 pages, I would say, of information about the Enneagram and the difference between your soul and your spirit and why it's important to know who you are. And then there's a 30-day journey, I call it, and it's daily journal prompts. It includes a stillness practice and reflections on things that were in the book, reflections of different either a Bible verse or a beautiful um, quote from someone to talking specifically about why you need to know who you are. And so then this journey helps to incorporate the information that you learned in the first part of the book and get it into your system, like you're saying, right? You're filling your head with things that are true and things that are good, things that will transform you. So that's why I wrote it, and um, I'm excited to release it.
I think I've heard a term for that, the integration. You got to integrate that stuff into yourself. I know I've heard that from I listen to a lot of like military spec ops guys and stuff, and hear about their PTSD and the troubles that they have coming back from that and
Mhm.
that healing journey. And a lot of that, they'll go do that ayahuasca or they'll go do a drug, a psychedelic thing, which
Huh?
I instantly. at the same time, I've done a lot of acid in my life, and I go, man, you mean I could get away with doing that and call it healing? Uh, and I can kind of see from looking back, I can kind of see how that, but every one of them will say it ain't that really. That just is like the springboard. It's the integration work you do when you get back is
Mm,
what really,
that's good.
and it's hard to
Yeah.
start these new habits. It's tough to, especially when you got to look at yourself and you might be seeing some things you don't like to look at. Uh,
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Our inner critic, and everybody knows what that is, right? Because we all have one. Its main job is to keep our personality intact. And so it's going to do whatever it can to make sure that you don't do new and different things that are going to change the rules because it thinks it's keeping you alive. So
yeah,
it's going to
and it wants
fight
that
really hard.
homeostasis too. It wants that.
Yes, exactly.
Uh,
So like I said, it is an act of courage to go into recovery or at any in any fashion. And I mentioned to you before we went on air that we are all addicted to our own personalities. And I don't mean to say that in a way that denigrates, physical addiction, but it's true in a very real sense because we get these patterns stuck in our heads and we think this is the way to live. This is the way everyone should be. And we can't figure out why it's not working and why things aren't working in our lives because the things that we're doing make total sense to us. So it really does take a hard look at yourself to be able to say, you know what, even if my life seems to be working, there's so much more that's available. And that's where that real transforming journey begins.
yeah, we have a on our in our third step prayer. It's asking, and it's really a decision step to move forward with the real work. It's got, it says, made a decision to turn our will and lives over to God as we understood him. And everybody's like, what? I said, you make a decision to do that. You can't do that today. I can't do that, man. But I'll make a decision to do that. And, but in that third
Yes.
step prayer, it says, relieve me of the bondage to self because I'm bonded to myself. Um,
So good.
Over and over again, it talks about selfishness, self-centeredness. All that is what's really at the root of why we can't change.
Mm,
We're attached to ourselves, and I think that's the same thing that you're saying about this addicted to our personality. That's
yep.
same stuff, but a different language. And I heard somebody
Yep.
else say another one because I always get pinged when I enjoy listening to these at some level, we're all doing the same thing. These people, you and me and my other guests, these people that are these forces for good, but there's little tweaks in it here, and we're using different tools. And my
Yep.
sponsor would say, really, the problem in the world is a lack of tools. And so, like
Mm,
your 30-day thing gives us somebody some tools that they could say, okay, you say do this, and that's
yep.
what I do with my guys when I take them through the steps. Okay, do this, do this. Why? Don't ask why, just do it. But there's another line, and I don't know. I heard my buddy Scott, the A speaker I love so dearly. That's who I actually remember. That's the voice that I hear. But it says at some point, he says, as I disclose myself to God, God discloses himself to me.
Yep.
And it's like right along the title of your, right in there, like the title of your book. It's,
Yeah, they're integrally connected. And I want to read a quote by Thomas Merton, who was just a wonderful mystic
yeah.
monk
He
from the
stayed
last.
right here. He lived right down here, just a little down the road, down in near Bardstown at Gethsemane, the
Yeah.
Abbey of Gethsemane. We go visit that on
Oh,
prayer because it's got energy down there, man.
yeah.
And you can go
Yeah,
out to his
that's
house. You can
fantastic.
go out to his house in the woods where he wrote. It's
His
pretty
little
cool. You can
hermitage.
feel that residual energy. I believe in that today. And
Oh, I absolutely believe that. I would love to do that. I need to come there one day. But this is sort of the cornerstone of the whole book, the whole concept of the book. There is only one problem on which all my existence, my peace, and my happiness depend: to discover myself in discovering God. If I find Him, I will find myself. And if I find my true self, I will find Him.
heard that before. I have a 365 Thomas Merton book, that's got a prayer in it every day, or some Thomas Merton thing. You know what I'm talking about. That
Oh, yeah,
12
I'm
step
getting
recovery
that.
is
That's
full of
amazing.
those things, man. We have one that's actually like AA approved literature that's called Daily Reflections. And it's but it might have quotes from other people, but somebody gifted me that. Thomas Merton became a like a synchronicity person for me at one point. You know, and that's another thing about
Mhm.
what's cool. I think it sounds a little arrogant sometimes but I'm living on a different plane, and it's not the same plane most of the
Yeah.
other people are working on. 'Cause I wish I was sitting at the other end of the table. I have a real lead crystal ball down there, and I like recovery gave me this. I have a crystal ball today, and I can see where I should go and where I should not go. But that in that connection, like a nudge from above or something. You know, it's a little
Hmm.
same
Yep.
thing I was saying about these sticky notes. I get these intuitions and stuff. And one
Yeah.
thing was, if something comes at me from multiple angles, like just totally unrelated, uh, I know I'm being told to look something, and I went to look further, and I'd seen something on. No, we went to Abbey Gethsemane, the Abbey of Gethsemane. One of the monks down there is in 12-step recovery. He will tell you, you know, those guys are religious now. I mean, you want to talk about spiritual. I don't know how much more spiritual you get than a monk. But he
Yeah.
would say, I didn't know spirituality until I came to 12 steps. He lifelong. And it was drinking the wine, you know, and in the church and doing stuff. Well, he would invite us down for a meeting in around 4 weeks before Christmas, and we'd go down there and we just hold our home group meeting at the Gethsemane. And he would come in and sit in with us, and then at the end of it, we walk up on top of this hill where there's a big cross, and we have like a prayer circle thing, and do some more of that. But so we went to Gethsemane, and that's the first time I heard the word somebody said Tom Merton. And now I'm feeling around on the TV, and there's a PBS special of Thomas Merton was on. And then I'm looking in
Hmm.
a newspaper, and at the Fraser Museum over in Louisville has a Thomas Merton thing set up all at the same time, you know, and it was boom, boom, boom. So then I tend to I go in a rabbit hole on things, you know, I'll deep dive something until I run it to ground. And I went into the Thomas Merton rabbit hole some years ago. I really still love him. He says a lot of good stuff, and that quote's a great one. It's probably
Yeah.
That's probably what Scott Lee was paraphrasing when he said it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's so true and it's so deep in importance. I just love him and I love, how deeply he thought through things. He's really just, a spiritual mentor still, even though he's
Yeah,
no longer with us. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's thankfully a lot of those out there. You know, it's funny how I don't know. Did you have a you did was there a particular overriding thing that it's like we have what we call a bottom. You know, when I hit the bottom, was there?
Mm.
Do you recall that in your change too? I know you said things started weighing on you or something, but
Well, I have been predisposed in my life to have some depression over the sorrows of the world. Just I have a kind of sort of tender heart. Yeah, so that's something that I've had to deal with over the years. It's getting better because again, God is my peace, and so that I know where I can go when I feel that way. Um, because it's not wrong. It's just only
yeah,
part of the story, right? It's just not
right.
the whole picture. That's the main thing. So for me, coming to the Enneagram again was just a fluke, right?
Accident.
We call it a coincidence, right? So I didn't have that experience where, oh, I feel desperate and therefore I need to go look for something. The something came to me. Again, was not an accident. It was a coincidence, but that set me on an initial 3 day just devastation when I actually saw, oh, I don't have it all together. I'm not all that. I have horrible fear in the core of my being, and that's why I'm acting the way that I do. That devastated me because it really like pulled the carpet out from under me. I didn't know who I was anymore. I'm like, oh my word, I've been living a lie this whole time. Who am I? I don't even
Yeah,
know. Like
it
I
made you
didn't
think
know
you were
what.
losing your mind.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't even know what to wear. Do I like that shirt because it makes me look like someone famous? What is my motivation? I don't know. And I was just freaking out for 3 days and I was just heartbroken, really, and so downcast. But after those 3 days, I began to realize, okay, that those things are all true, and this is real. And so I need to dedicate myself to learning about it. I can't go back. I can't unsee this, you know?
Yeah.
So what am I going to do? I'm going to dedicate myself to learning it deeply. And I didn't even tell anyone about it. I didn't even talk about it for like the first 3 years
Mm.
because another factor of my personality is that I'm someone who gets excited about things, right? I'm like a magpie. I'm always after the next shiny thing, or the next fascinating thing, right? And so I thought, I'm not going to try to get people into this if I'm not going to stick with it. So I just buckled down and started reading books, and I found a nearby retreat that talked about the Enneagram, and I did
Mm.
that. And then finally, after 3 years, I went, okay, I'm in. I'm not going back. I can tell people about this now. And that began my external journey of trying to help other people in this way.
And you probably did it in a much more powerful way after having looked into it like that. Sometimes we get something new and then we want to go out and teach people about it. We don't have no business doing it. We think we know more than
I
we do know. So you had that opportunity
right.
to actually like get an education on it. So then when you did decide to step out, you could do it in a powerful fashion where it made sense to people and it could actually help. It could do some of that. I see it's another thing around here is that new guys, they get that heart for helping. It's got to wall them a little bit because they don't can do harm without meaning to.
Right.
Say, talk to
Yep.
me. I used to say, and I tell myself, if I was doing anything any more important than buying new underwear, I was talking to my sponsor about it. That was my threshold. If it was more important than that, I would say, "Hey, Christopher, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think?"
Hmm. Yeah, it's wonderful to have guides and people who can help you on your journey. We're all on a journey. One of my favorite phrases is we are walking each other home.
Mm-hmm.
We need people who have gone before us, people who are even, 5 steps ahead of us on the same trail, to come alongside us and help us on this
Yeah.
journey. It's just hard, there's just a
Yeah.
lot of hard things about life, but there are also beautiful and glorious things that we're not going to be able to see unless we're on that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to have a visual, and I've had it in my early recovery of a line of people walking in the dark with lanterns. You know,
Mm,
I'm watching the guy in front of me, and he's watching the guy in front of him. We're all just one big train walking in what feels like in the dark sometimes, because I don't know what I'm doing really.
yeah. Yeah, we're
Uh,
all on this wild journey where we don't know what's ahead, you know? And so it really is this it's just an ongoing discovery. It's an ongoing process of learning and growing and figuring it out as we go.
like I said today, what I do have that I didn't have is I have that like that the optimism of a child going into tomorrow. And love that piece. Because I can peek around the corner and go, oh, what's coming up next? So, something's going to come along.
Yeah, wherever people may be in their lives as they're listening or watching this podcast, it gets better. Life gets better than you could even have imagined. There was a period when I was in high school where I was just so depressed and heartbroken over the state of the world and over, the things that had happened in my family that hurt my heart. I couldn't imagine life getting better. I remember thinking, if this is all there is to life, I'm out. I'm not
Yeah,
interested,
me too.
right? And
Me too.
in this level of pain for several more decades of, I don't want to keep doing this. But there was a little
Probably
voice
dope
that,
and booze probably saved my life at one point.
here's the thing. Do you know who Gabor Mate is?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I read his giant book, The Myth of Normal. It's fantastic. And he says that people never ask, what did the drugs and alcohol do for you? Why did you do it? It's because there's a reason, and it's
I
because you're
was
selfish.
suicidal and I couldn't tell anybody. I
Yeah,
didn't want to live another day. I would go to bed every night going, I don't want to wake up tomorrow. I don't, and I was praying and stuff too in that manner.
yeah,
Um, if you take
yeah.
me
When I
tonight to a God I didn't even believe in, uh, and not wanting to do that. And I certainly couldn't tell anybody. So then you get up and you put your happy face on, so mom and dad think you're okay,
Yep.
and go to school, do the best you can there, and And but when I got the dope and boost, those feelings left. If I smoked a joint or drank,
Yeah.
I'm okay now.
I
And
mean, it's a
that took that
survival
on for
tactic.
40 years or something.
Yeah.
Started
But
when
I
I was
mean,
about 14.
humans are brilliant. We're really great at figuring out a way to get by and how to survive, because we do really have that strong survival instinct. We can get to that point where we're hopeless. And I certainly did feel like that at some points
I
in
picked
high
that back up.
school, because
You
it,
said a
it
little
didn't.
voice. Cut you off
Yeah.
when you
So
said a
there was
little
there was
voice.
this little voice in my head that I now know was the Holy Spirit. But at the time, I just heard this voice saying, it's going to get better. I had no evidence that it was going to get better. That did not come from me, right? That was not my idea. But I just kept hearing this voice. It's going to get better. And so, against all evidence to the contrary, I believed that voice that I kept hearing. And my word, my life today is phenomenally better than I could have even dreamed. So, I just want to encourage everybody, who might be having a hard day or a hard span of life, a rough patch. It gets better. And if you will do the work, you will be amazed at how your life is transformed.
Or line out of the book, and there it says in some level uh, that the life we get is better than anything we could have planned. And I like to say, if you'd have asked me back when I walked into recovery, okay, Dan, make a list of the stuff you want, I'd have sold myself short. There's no way I could have asked or even began to believe that some of the things that happened. This listeners ad nauseum on this one too, but those miracles started happening in my life, and I call them that. That's what they were. I mean, some of them were
Yep.
we couldn't explain them. And I didn't have the eyes to see them either. See, I thought that was still when I thought they were flukes. And my wonderful sponsor would had this little line, and he'd say, "You know what that is, don't you?" And I'd be going, "Yeah, well, yeah, it's a blah, blah." And he says, "No, no, no, no. When I say you know what it is, you just say what, sponsor, tell me." And and he would shine new eyes on it. There's a book by an old recovery dude from back then that it's called A New Pair of Glasses. And that's
Mm,
what it felt like. I got new eyes. I've seen things in different ways. And now my job is to do the same thing with my new guys when they don't see the miracle that just happened.
yeah.
And they're like stumbling on it. And he's told me
Hmm.
he doesn't remember doing this, but I have a recollection of him telling me to start writing these things down because the rate that they were flooding in my gates, there's no way that you're going to remember. And so I started back then this miracle list all the way back. And I've got these little, just,
Beautiful.
if you read it, you wouldn't know what it means, but I can tell the story off of every bullet item. And
Hmm.
I do sometimes. I
Yep.
do lots of times. Sometimes I get asked to talk, and I use that as a framework for my talk. Uh,
Yeah.
because all this stuff happened, and it's like a long-term gratitude list, and I add to it. I add to it still. It's getting longer
Mm,
and longer and longer as these miracles in recovery happen for me. Oh,
yeah.
and there's a lot of there's some I don't know, loose definitions for miracles. Some kind of, I have a little thing, or I read that once in a while, but at the very least, these are things that would not have happened had I not got sober.
Yes, at the very least.
At the very least.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, well, cool. So, tell the book again, and you said come out in March. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So the book is called Know Yourself to Know God. And you can go to Amazon and look up my name. And then if you follow me on Amazon, my
You'll get
author page,
notified.
then then you'll be notified when it comes out. You can also go to my website, heathdavishhavlick.com. And if you go over to the blog tab and wait a minute or two, you'll get a pop up, and then you can subscribe to my newsletter that comes out twice a month. And that way you'll be sure to be notified when it comes out.
Cool. I will do that myself.
Hey,
I do get a few. I run into the best people. It's like, Ali, that's the other thing about this job I got here of meeting fantastic people on a weekly basis from all over the world. I was like, how
mhm.
would that have happened? How would that ever have happened any other way?
Yep, yep.
Yeah, and I will link up that stuff. And what I'll do, I'll make myself a mental note that when the book actually comes out, I will go in and edit the show note and put the hot link in there at that point in time. Kind of like these
I appreciate
episodes,
that.
podcasts you can't see. Well, on YouTube you can, but like on the regular
Right.
Spotify and Apple and all that, you can't get the link until it comes out. So I've got stuff
Okay.
scheduled for the IM12 podcast all the way out to, well, it's not all the way out anymore, but out somewhere into February. But I can't send the
Uh-huh.
link until like this morning. The guy from last week. I put new content out. I try to put new content out every Sunday. I miss one once in a while, but uh, so so this will come out next Sunday morning. I try to kind of do
Okay,
this
good.
just in time delivery kind of stuff too, because I've been asked to be on some podcasts. And like what I happen a lot of times, if you have a podcast, we'll cross pollinate. We'll talk, and if you like me, you'll say, "Hey, would you be willing to come on my show too?" And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we'll do that. And I'll say in that it might be 8 or 10 weeks before this episode's going to come out. It's a little disheartening in a way. Uh, I want to tell you, your podcast is going to come out next week.
Fantastic. I
All right.
will I will let everyone know. I will alert the media.
And next Sunday, I'll send you links for what I usually send to YouTube and the Spotify and the Apple. It's the only place people are
Awesome.
listening to stuff.
That's great.
It goes out to a whole bunch of a dozen other podcast platforms, but I don't pay attention to them. It goes out there. Somebody probably is listening. I don't. Uh, and a few of them. All right. Well, it was a joy to get to know you and hear your work. And once again, we get to join forces for the good. And,
Yes.
real simple thing we say in 12-step recovery: help someone. Uh,
Absolutely. It makes you feel better and it makes your life better. Yeah. So
yep.
just joy to meet you, Dan. So much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Yep. Have a good evening. Bye.
Same to you.